Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well today. My name's Gylfi Heimisson. I'm part of the TTS consultancy. We're here on stand 34, just around the corner. So I'm part of the professional services consultancy arm from that company. What I'm really here to do for you today is to talk about when people actually learn in the workplace. And we're going to look at how you can really help users in their particular moments of need when they're trying to learn something in the workplace to really make it more effective for them and to make them much better at their jobs on the whole, and how you can save time and make everything more efficient in that process. So to that end, what will really help us with this is a concept, a framework called the 5 Moments of Need. And this was developed by some thought leaders called Bob Mosher and Conrad Gottfredson from our partners Apply Synergies. And what this framework really does is it tells us that there's 5 specific moments when users actually learn. And we're going to go into that in more detail so that we understand what each of those different 5 moments are. But just before we go into that, just a sort of general question for everyone from your perspective is, when do we actually learn? Is it just when someone from HR tells us that we need to go on a course and then we go away and spend 2 days in a classroom somewhere? Do we actually learn effectively at that point? Or is it more when we're actually on the job and we're doing the tasks that we're trying to carry out? Is that more when we actually learn? So with that in mind, we'll actually take a look at more detail in what all of these different 5 moments are. So to start with, one time when you learn is when you're learning something completely brand new. So you've never actually seen this thing before, it's completely new to you, and you need to learn about it. So one example that we'll look at later on is if you have a new piece of software at your company, completely brand new, no one's ever seen it before, you need to learn it for the first time. Similarly to that, there's a moment when you need to learn more about something. So you already know a process, you already know the task that you need to carry out, but you want to try and become more of a subject matter expert for that within your team, or you want to learn more functionality around what you're doing. And at that point, you need to learn more about it. And these are the 2 moments that we're really most familiar with, because typically these are covered by formal learning. It's typically in a classroom, or maybe it's done through e-learnings or webinars, but it's a formal setting. And it's really more about engaging the users in the particular processes, the concepts behind what it is, and motivating them to actually use these new processes so that they really understand what they're doing. But most notably, this type of training almost invariably happens before the user actually has to do the task. So you might teach someone something and it might be 2 weeks, it might be a month before they actually have to do it. So there's time for them to forget that. So that brings us on to the next few moments, and these are really where we're going to focus on more today. So the first moment is a moment of apply. So this is where you're actually in a job, you're trying to carry out your task, and you're trying to apply the knowledge that you learned during those first 2 moments. And at this point, you might get stuck on something. You might have been taught it, and you think, oh, I remember this, but I can't quite remember how to get started on this task. So when you're trying to apply the knowledge at first, this is one of the key moments when you're actually going to be learning. Similarly, you might actually remember all of the things. You might have applied this knowledge several times, but something might go wrong. I'm sure you've had several times in various software applications, for example, where you're trying to do something and something breaks. So how do you proceed from there? There's multiple options. You could call a support desk, you could go and ask a colleague, but that all takes time. It takes time out of other people's days. How would it be best for you to learn for yourself how to cope with that particular issue? And finally, one of the key things in the market at the moment, particularly with the emergence of more and more SaaS cloud-based products, is that the rate of change of software is absolutely massive. So you might go to work one day and you know absolutely everything, and then you come in the next day and all of the pages, all of the processes have suddenly changed overnight. So how do you deal with that change? Do you go on another classroom training course, or are you able to learn in a more effective way in order to deal with that change? And these final 3 moments are what we would suggest that you deal with, not through formal learning, but through performance support. And with performance support, this is really where you can engage in applying the knowledge that you have and taking it and putting it to the apply, solve, and change moments. So there's a lot of different moments where you're able to learn in this framework. So the real question for that is, how do you create the knowledge and how do you curate the knowledge, or how do you handle all of these moments of need for your users? So what we'll look at next is a graph that probably quite a few of you might have seen in various guises before. The actual concept behind this is probably about 20 years old, but it is still very relevant today, particularly in this framework. And what we'll see is typically you might have a moment of need. That would be, in this example, this go live date, for example, the software rollout. So at one point in time, say in 2 months from now, there's new software coming out at your company, and everyone needs to know what to do at that point. So the typical way you might do something is you would create a whole set of classroom training courses or e-learning courses, and you would teach all of your employees all of the different processes and things that they need to do in order to carry out their tasks for that. But what you always have is the famous Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And what this basically states is that within half an hour, within 2 hours of learning something, you start to forget everything that you've learned already. I'm sure you've probably tried to learn something from YouTube, and then a day later you try to do it again and you've forgotten it, you have to go back to the video. So you always forget things quite quickly unless you're applying that knowledge straight away, which is why once you get to the go live, once you're on the job, that's when your learning and your knowledge starts to go up straight away again, because you're actually applying that knowledge and trying to learn again. But because you've already forgotten so much of what you've learned, it will take a much longer time for your knowledge to get back up to 100%. So what we would advocate is that you don't actually need to teach everyone everything up front in those classroom training courses, because a lot of what you need to learn in those courses is the main concepts behind what you're doing, the processes, the general overview, and maybe what you need to teach people is a really highly critical task, the things that they'll be doing every day, but things that are maybe less frequent, for example, how to book annual leave. You're not going to be doing that for 3 months after being taught, so you're definitely going to have forgotten the process, so why bother teaching it at the beginning? So what we would say is that actually, in the classroom training, teach a lot less. Teach maybe 20 or 30% of what you need to do, and the focus there is really on the processes, on motivating the users to understand why they're doing what they need to do, because if they understand the process, it will make the tasks that they're carrying out later on much easier. And what you do for all of those other processes is support it using performance supports on the job. So this is where a user can go into a task that they're doing, into an application, and if they're stuck on something, they can just access the help for that particular task straight away, and that's how they learn for it. And what this really means as well is, you see, we've still got the forgetting curve here, so you still forget a huge amount. But because you're teaching them a lot less in the classroom courses, the courses are much shorter, which means that you can actually push those courses much closer to that go-live date. And by pushing it much closer to the go-live date, the forgetting curve is massively reduced. So you don't forget as much, which means that the amount that you have to learn to get back up to 100% is much less. And that in turn means that the performance of the users is generally going to be much higher in a much shorter time frame. So the next question for this is, you've created all of this classroom training, and how does that then relate to this methodology? Can you just take that training that you've created, cut it down, and just put it into a performance support system and say, if you're stuck and it's something we haven't taught you, just go and look at it here? Or we would say the answer is no, because if you look at the standard training design, it's sort of like a top-down pyramid, where you have a moment of need. That's the same go-live date that you saw on that chart. And with the formal learning, the moments 1 and 2, when you're learning something new and learning something more, what you want to look at first, and what we see, is that the main thing you do in the classroom with the formal training is first you tell people the objectives, what are they going to get out of this course? And then you look more at the concepts, what is this course about? What's the whole overall idea behind this process or this course that we're going on? And then you look into some more details of that, and finally, at the end, you get down to the steps, the task level of the things that you need to carry out to actually do your job. So that's very good on a classroom training course because, as I mentioned, the really important thing there is the objectives, the concepts, the whole overarching processes behind it and the motivation for the users to understand what they're doing. Whereas at the moment of need, when you're having the performance support, so moments 3, 4, and 5, so you need to apply your knowledge, there's a problem that you need to solve, or something in the system has changed. What we would say is that you actually reverse this. So instead of going with the objectives first, you provide the steps first, because the user just needs to know exactly what they need to do to get through this task or to solve the problem that they have, because they've already learned the concepts and the processes in the classroom training with that minimized learning approach that we talked about before. So we stay at the step detail at the beginning, but we offer the user the opportunity to go into more detail if they want to. Or one example of this might be, let's say there's someone who's going on holiday in your work and you need to take over their job, but you've never done their tasks before. So it might be helpful for you to do some practices or demos before you actually jump into the tasks, that you know what you're doing. So that's one level of help for them. And then if necessary, you might want to go into some other resources to help make your job easier so that you understand what to do. So this is quite a lot of things that we need to look at. So what we really need to think about is, how do we design performance support? So what are the principles between designing a good system for this and just designing some classroom training concepts? So the first thing that a user needs in order to make performance support effective for them is that it has to fit into the user's workflow. So you could implement a CRM system such as Salesforce, and you could just buy in a whole load of training content for that. But CRM systems like that are always heavily customized to a particular customer's needs. So if you just buy generic material, it's not going to be relevant to what the user's doing in their day-to-day tasks. So you have to make sure that the learning content that's provided to them is relevant to what they're doing at that moment of their need. Secondly, the help has to be contextual. So if you're stuck in a task or you need to apply your knowledge, you don't want to spend half an hour going to an LMS, searching through that for 20 minutes, and then finding a piece of e-learning, and then the particular step that you're stuck on is step 20 out of 50. But if you have an e-learning that you need to go through, it's going to take you 10 minutes to get to that point to find out what you need to do. So then you've just wasted an hour of your time trying to find exactly what you need. So the help that we need to provide needs to be contextual so that when you open up your performance support, it knows what task you're doing, and it gives you that help that you need exactly for that task that you're carrying out. So that's a very important key to that. And finally, it has to be just enough for the users. And this is going back to the reverse pyramid, where you offer the steps first because the user's just trying to get through the task. They're not trying to learn the whole processes and the concepts behind their job. They're just trying to get through what they need to do at the moment. So it has to be just enough. Now, combining all of these together, what you need is a single point of access for all of this. Because I'm sure you might have similar things in your organizations where you have some knowledge shared in OneNote, some in a SharePoint drive, some in a different repository somewhere else, and you're never quite sure where the right knowledge you need is at any one time. So what users need is a single point of access to get all of the help content that they need, so that they just need one click to go there and they've got everything. Beyond that, it needs to be a single point of truth. So the help content always needs to be up to date for those users, because if you go to a help system and you find content that's outdated or incorrect, you might be okay with that maybe once or twice, but the third time it happens, you're probably never going to use the system again, and you're going to go back to the old way of asking colleagues and phoning a help desk, and people will lose faith in the whole learning solution that's been implemented. And these two things combined, a single point of access and a single point of truth, combined for the users to make a single point of trust, because they can always access one location and they know that the content will always be up to date and relevant to what they need to do. And this content will be available for the users within 2 clicks and 10 seconds of accessing it. So it's contextual, they can click on it, it knows where they are, they've got the help content that they need straight away. And because it's just that one source, and because it's always up to date, they know that it's going to be truthful, and they're always going to keep going back to it in order to help them. So Do any of you currently use an EPSS solution at the moment in your company's electronic performance support system at all? No? Okay, so what I'll go on to do quickly now is I'll show you an example, because I'm sure that going through all of this, it sounds quite complicated to put this all together into a learning plan for users and how to build everything out. So I'll show you an example using our software TT Performance Suite to show you how you can structure the formal learning side of things from a sort of e-learning perspective, but how you can also deal with moments 3, 4, and 5, the apply, solve, and change with the performance support in all of this concept here. So let's pretend for a moment that my name is Ben. I'm an account manager for a company which is called The Company. And what we're about to do is implement a new CRM system, and I'm told that I need to work with this, and I've never worked with it before, so I need to learn something. So, because I've never worked with it before, this is something new. This is moment 1 that I need to deal with. So I need to learn something, and I'm ready for some training. And I could either do some classroom training where someone's showing me everything that I need to do, or I could use e-learning courses or webinars to learn everything. So that's the other option, an e-learning course that I can do. This could be mandatory, it could be optional. If it's optional, you might be using a flipped classroom approach where people do some e-learning ahead of time, and then you might have some facilitation or coaching sessions. But let's say that we're doing an e-learning course for this. So I'll flip over to my other system here. So what you'll see here is one of the end user views of our software. So this is a content management system for users, and this has all of the learning content that they might go through. So I'm logged in as Bob here. You can see me. And I have access to a couple of courses. There's a few generic ones on Microsoft Office. There's some general non-IT content on health and safety. But I'm going to be implementing Salesforce, so I'm going to go into my Salesforce course. Now, you'll see that there's a number of different courses inside here. There's one for sales, one for marketing, and one for services. But because I'm an account manager, I can see that these courses exist, but the marketing and the service courses aren't relevant to me. So while I can see them, I can't actually go into them, but I know that they're there, so I can request access if I want at a later point. So I can go into my sales course, and I can look at some lead management information. And inside here, it's going to show me all of the course content that I need. So this would match up with a classroom training course that you're running, just in an e-learning format. So I can see an introduction of what is a lead, some process descriptions. But what I really want to know, the most important thing for me as an account manager, is how to add a new lead to the system. So what I can do for this is I can start my e-learning course. And this is always available for me. So got some objectives, and I need to go through this. So I need to click on the leads button. It's fully interactive. Click on new. So I can go through this process, and it's full course teaching me what I need to do, like in a sandbox sort of environment with any help that's available here. If I'm clicking in the wrong place, it will show me where I need to click. Similarly, I can also view documentation for this, so a user manual for what I need to do. So all of these courses are available, and the user can go through them. This is not necessarily mandatory because it's just a content management system, but it can also be integrated with learning management systems to add it to users' learning paths. So this is useful for formal learning in that sense, but also for informal learning as self-service on demand. It's a Friday night, I've got some time to spare before I need to go home. I think I might want to go in and learn something more about the system. So I can go in here, self-service on demand. This is moment 2 where I want to learn more. And I can go in here, find the course that I want to study, and learn something more about that very easily. Similarly, I can look at this from a different view. Instead of looking at a course, such as a course on lead management, I could look at this in terms of business processes within my company. And here I could look at customer relationship management and go to lead management again. And here I can see the entire process that's being carried out. So each step of that process and who's responsible for each step. So I can see that as an account manager, I'm involved in every single step of this process. So is the sales manager, but the sales assistant, for example, is only involved in these middle 2 processes inside here. So if I logged in as a sales assistant in the system, I would see the whole process, so I get the overarching view, but I would only be able to access the content that's relevant for me in my work. So these are the moments 1 and 2, when I'm learning something new and when I need to apply something. So if I jump back here, let's jump on to the next one. So now I need to apply something in my system. So I've learned all of this. I've done my training course. This was maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and now the system's actually gone live and I need to do my job. But I can't really remember what I need to do. So I need to use a performance support system. So what we provide to people is a little orange that sits in the system tray. And I'll go into the system now. So I'm in my system, I'm in Salesforce, and I'm logged in as an account manager. And what I need to do is create a new lead in the system. And I can't really remember what I need to do, but I see a thing up here called lead, so I'm guessing that's probably a good place to start. So I'll go in there. I'm still kind of guessing at the moment. But now I'm not really sure what I need to do. So down in my system tray, I can click on this orange. And when I open this up, what it will do is it will recognize that I'm in Salesforce. It sees that I'm in the leads page, so it knows the context of where I am, and it's giving me the help that's relevant to this page in detail. So I can see everything that's relevant to leads at the moment. But now, as I've opened this, I remember that to add a new lead, I need to go into the new page here, because I've just seen that button and it makes sense. So I go in here, and my performance support will now see that I'm in the editing a lead page, and it will modify the help that's provided to me to suit that page that I'm in. So it's contextual. You see that it's only one click to open up the help, then it will follow where I am. So if I then want to see what content there is, I want to see how to add a lead, I can open up a quick guide. So remember, this is just the steps that I need, because that's the top level of the pyramid. It's just enough information to get through my task. So with this, I can see that I need to enter the lead status here. I'm not entirely sure where that is on my screen, so I can take a look at short animation, and it will highlight where on my screen this is. So now I know that it's here, and I can click on the option that I need. So that provides the help for me. But then all of those other bits of content that you saw are also available here, that documentation, the e-learning. So this is where you go further into details if you want other resources, if you want to learn more, if you want to do a practice or a demo. If I want to do a demo, again, I can open up that e-learning so I can practice doing this task before I need to go in and actually do it in the live system. But the other thing that was mentioned is that you need other resources. So if you want to know something more about the process, I could take a look, for example, here at this complete guide to lead generation. So this shows that you can also, it's not just content that you create in the system, it's any external content that you have that you think would be relevant to a particular task or a process, can be contextualized, can be added in. Yes? There? So anything that you have can be contextualized, can be added in. So any existing content that you have can be put into the system. So this is where, if you look at your old classroom training approach, where you have a whole load of material, we're not saying get rid of all of that material. You can cut it down, keep it to the processes, the concepts, the critical tasks, the motivation. But you don't need to get rid of that to make it a performance support center. It can be reused, restructured, and contextualized to add the performance support. So you can use your existing content and also add supplementary material in order to aid people in the apply stage of the task. So at the next stage, I need to solve a problem, moment 4. What if something goes wrong here? Now, I filled in this entire screen and I tried to click on save, but I'm getting an error message. What's going on here? Why is it not working? So then I could add some performance support into here, some guides on what to do in case there's an error. But what you can also do is add in some links. So you could contact the sales manager via email, for example, or I could contact the support team. If I contact support, this is going to open a Skype link directly to the support help desk so that I can talk to them. And because this is contextualized, you can put in the link to the contact person who's relevant for every single task or process. So if you have a contact person who's a subject matter expert on lead creation, or someone who's a subject matter expert on maintaining accounts, you could put in a separate contact link to that person. So it's relevant for what they're trying to do at that moment. Now, the final moment is the moment of change. What happens if there's something new? So again, you can add that in. You can see there's a what's new category at the top here. And what's new is that there's a new field here called the lead source. So if I open this up, it will show me that there's a lead source in here. It will tell me something about it, and I can see where on the screen this is. So I can see here, this is at the bottom of the screen, so I can scroll down, and here I can see this new field. So anything that's new, anything that's changed, you can push that out to the users through the performance support as well. So all 5 moments of need are covered here through the content management system when you're learning something new and trying to learn something more, and through the performance support system when you're trying to apply your knowledge, when you're trying to solve any problems, or when you're trying to deal with any changes to the system. So are there any questions on sort of how that looks? Can you see how that might work with new systems implementation that you're doing? Yeah? Okay. So just to sort of wrap up a little bit on this, is what you'll see, with what I've just shown you with our for the TC Performance Suite, is that you have the management of all of the content in the content management system. So you can curate the content, you can link it to users' business roles like I've shown you. It's all done through workflow, so it's fixed into the user's workflow, as well as an author's workflow. It's available for users' usage, so I've shown you that it fits all of those different 5 moments of need with the new, learn, apply, solve, and change moments that's available. All of those are available. But it also, and I haven't touched on this today because of time limitations, but you can also produce all of that content out of the platform as well. So you can produce, curate, and manage all of your content through the platform to make it context sensitive and provide the help to the users in any of their 5 moments of need. So does anyone have any questions on this at the moment? No? Well then, thank you everyone for your time. If you want to learn anything more from me or talk to us some more about this, you can find us on stand 34 just around the corner. We'd be happy to talk to you in more detail about any of this. So thank you.